Well, promoter Eddie Hearn, I've got to ask you because every time we're in Las Vegas, no matter what the show is, no matter what the fight is, when you stand here on your balcony and you have a little look out there at the views, do you always get a particular feeling coming back to Sin City for a fight?
Yeah, I think, we've been here many times now over the years, going back to Nazim Hamed against Marco Antonio Barrera. I remember coming here, I think I was about 19 or 20, and we've had some big shows here, obviously many shows with Devin Haney. And this is the first time we've had a Brit headlining in Las Vegas. And it's a great moment for Conor Benn's career. There's a lot of young fighters who are lucky enough to make the trip as well. Of course, Johnny Fisher, bringing plenty of fans out here, George Liddard, Jimmy Sains. But for Conor Benn, any fighter that gets to headline on a strip is a big moment in their career. And obviously doing it at UK time zone as well. It's a little bit strange because the show will start at 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning. So making sure that the UK fight fans can watch it as normal, and a massive moment in the career of Conor Benn.
We just had the face-to-face by the iconic Las Vegas sign, which probably would have gone out by the time this interview goes out. What were they saying there? And I guess when you're looking at the start of fight week, that's not a bad way to kickstart things.
Yeah, I mean, Dobson's been very vocal. I mean, he's always got a lot to say for himself. I remember when he was at the actual show for Edgar Berlanga in Orlando, I think he got kicked out of the arena because he was trying to fight everyone. So he's lively, he's undefeated, and as he said in the head-to-head, I'm from the dirt. He's had nothing given to him in his career, and he's been looking for a moment like this. I think still some people look at Conor Benn as maybe a hype job, but Conor was calm, and I think you're going to see a vicious, ferocious performance from Conor Benn. He's looked unbelievable in camp. He's meticulous in everything that he does, and it's statement time. We know there's talk of the big fights. This is a good, solid test to give him activity, but he must be rolling through guys like Peter Dobson. He's got to go in there and annihilate him and make a big statement if he's going to mention those guys. And those guys are coming, those guys are there, those fights will get made, whether it's April or May, it will be next. But he's got the job to do on Saturday, and he needs to do it in style.
Do you expect him to do that? Is that what as Conor's been saying, he'll make this fight look how it's supposed to look, based on what you just said there? Is that how you expect him truly to win this fight?
Do you know what? Conor can have all the game plans in the world. He is pound for pound one of the most exciting, ferocious fighters on the planet. He lets his hands go at every opportunity. His hand speed is phenomenal. He's punching harder than ever. He's box office every time he fights. Even in his last fight, which was a 10-round comeback fight, supposed to be fairly straightforward, it was an absolute war. I mean, he hit Orozco with everything. And I think this time he's going to be sharper. He's had that run-out fight. I expect him to stop Dobson, but Dobson's very tough, undefeated. He doesn't know how to lose. And as I said, an absolute dream moment for him. He's going to give it everything.
Back-to-back fights here in the USA now. Do you believe, Eddie, this year we will see a return to the UK for Conor Benn?
Well, I hope so. I mean, right now, the UK is the only place where Conor Benn can't fight under the British Boxing Board of Control. You see every commission in the world allowing Conor Benn to fight because he's no longer suspended. I've said it a million times, he was cleared by UKAD and therefore cleared by the British Boxing Board of Control. There's a battle of egos, if you like, and of course they are looking to appeal, which I think happens sometime in February. Hopefully when that's over and Conor Benn wins that, we can just resume as normal. We're dying out for a big fight in the UK. The UK needs a big fight. Sooner or later, it's going to be, 2 years, coming up since those last fights of his. And, he's been through a lot. He's been through various different procedures, of which both times been cleared. He's done everything that's been asked of him. So, like I said, it's frustrating that he can box in Las Vegas, in Florida, in Texas, in New York, anywhere in the world, but not in his home country. And hopefully, once this is resolved, we can crack on and make the mega fights. I can make a mega fight for Conor Benn like that in the UK. And if we can't, we're going to make it here. So this is a nice fight for him to break into that market, get some US eyeballs as well. And everyone seems to call his name, as well as him calling everyone else's name. So our job is to make a big fight for him next. But I want the activity. And we had 5 weeks to make this fight after the Eubank mess. We got it. He's headlining. He's out. He's getting paid. The next one must be a big one.
If you were to make one of those fights in the UK, what names do you believe you could make easily enough?
Now, people are probably bored about me talking about Eubank, but it still baffles me that Chris Eubank didn't take that fight. A guy who's 2 divisions lower than him, a payday 2 or 3 times bigger than he can get anywhere else in the world. I never say a fighter's ducking or he's scared, but it just doesn't make sense. Away from Chris Eubank Jr., Kell Brook, Liam Smith, 2 fights that I love in the UK, but also the ability to bring a US name over. Honestly, Conor will fight anyone. He talks about Crawford, he talks about Boots. Listen, they're in my opinion, 2 of the top 5 pound-for-pound fighters in the world. But he wants it, and he wants to test himself against the very best.
Do you think we will see Chris Eubank Jr. against Kell Brook? Talks ongoing for that one, it seems.
Doesn't make sense. It's a manufactured fight with 2 guys that had no history. Eubank Ben, you've got one of the greatest rivalries in the history of British boxing coming together. Both guys making Eubank will make twice as much money, at least, for the Conor Benn fight than he would for Kell Brook. What does he think? Kell Brook's an easier touch? I don't know. Because I'll tell you something now. When that bell goes on Ben Eubank, Conor Benn will unload everything on Chris Eubank. 2 divisions higher. Maybe he can take it. But he will go to town on him. And that will be a toe-to-toe classic. Let's do it. Let's do it for British boxing.
Remains to be seen what happens on that one. There is a few things to talk to yourself about. Obviously, it was weird in Belfast without you there, especially in the ring. It was a little bit strange, but you were watching from Arizona. What did you think of some standout performances that night?
Yeah, it's a great show, great atmosphere in the Ulster Hall. We moved venues because we only had a couple of weeks, quite small for us, but everybody on top of each other. And when you go through the card, I was really impressed by Conor Walker. Took the fight at short notice. He'll fight anyone. Just went in with an undefeated fighter and just demolished him. Really good performance. I think there's some big fights at 147 for Conor. Paddy Donovan. A lot of these guys who are fighting in January, they didn't get much notice. And you could see that with Paddy in terms of his physique. You could see it with his performance. But he had to dig deep. He got buzzed a little bit in that round before. Had to come through and stopped a very good opponent. I thought Chev was brilliant. I thought it was a great fight for Chev, but you've still got to go in there and make the statement. And to go away from home and just be that wrecking ball who just goes into the lion's den and just demolishes the opponent, really good statement from Chev. And it's frustrating because we want the British title. And Isaac Chamberlain, all these fighters will fight everybody, but they're not going to let Isaac Chamberlain fight Chev. So just vacate the title and let us do our own thing. But what I'm pleased about is while they are messing around, Chev got active and he was in a proper fight with Tommy McCarthy. So, I want him to fight for the British title next, get him out as soon as possible. I thought the main event, he's a real handful, Lewis Crocker. I think the size disparity was there to be seen, and I want to give Jose Felix another chance as well. And it wasn't Lewis Crocker's fault necessarily as well. He needed to make the check weigh, but he was more than happy to make 147 pounds, but was told he wasn't allowed to come in less than 150. So it was taken out of his hands. We believe he could have made 147 safely, but he wasn't allowed to. And, you could see the size difference of a guy that really wanted to fight at light welterweight was fighting at welterweight. But Jose Felix is still a handful, he's a danger, and Lewis demolished him. And, there's a lot of talk about Lewis Crocker and Paddy Donovan now. And, talks about getting compensated correctly. Is it worth building the fight? Do we let it marinate? Do you know what I mean? Or do we make it now? And I think Irish boxing's got a real good thing going at the moment. And we've got to plan it right. We've got to map it out. But really big shows ahead.
What is your verdict on that, though? Because is it a fight that we should just make this year? Could it be on the undercard of Katie Taylor, whatever she does?
Yeah, this year, 100%. It's just, is it next or is it the one after? That's all I'm thinking. We have a chance here to do a real classic all-Irish fight. And at the end of the day, if these guys are going to go and be special, be elite, they've got to be beating each other. I think we need to... People talk about Paddy fighting in Limerick. I'd love to do it, personally, whether that's a next gen, whatever it looks like. Maybe run Lewis out on the Katie Taylor card. But in my opinion, let's not waste the opportunity to make an all-Irish classic between Crocker and Donovan. It's one that can sell out the SSE, the Odyssey, and can really... And Lewis is right. I've seen his interviews. We need to be compensated for... Fucking right. It's a 50-50 fight. But if you believe you win, that's the kind of fight that's going to take you to the next level. Profile, commercially, purse-wise, everything. And I think we could do something really special. I'm buzzing for Irish boxing. Dublin, Belfast, there's opportunities for big shows all round.
That's Belfast. In Arizona, of course, didn't go, unfortunately, the way of our man, John Ryder. I guess just you've had a bit of time to process that and reflect on it. What did you make watching from ringside?
John was John. He was full of guts, full of heart, beaten by the better man. I thought Munguia was really impressive. Like watching him up close for the first time, he's a handful. He's got fantastic output. And that was one of my concerns in the fight is, how do you beat Munguia if you're John Ryder? You got to match his output, or you got to hurt him. You got to outbox him. And Munguia kind of ticked all those boxes. John hit him with some good shots, but didn't really put a dent in him. The output was fantastic. And even up close, when we expected John to have success, I still I thought it was a terrible start, 2 knockdowns in 4 rounds. I gave John the first. I gave him 6 and 7 or 5 and 6. But with the knockdowns, all of a sudden, he needs a stoppage to win. That's after 4 rounds. So you're sitting on the ropes trying to counter to land that big shot, but then you're also taking 8 or 9 from Munguia in the process. So very proud of John. But Munguia proved to me that he is the real deal. And I thought it was a great performance from him.
Do you believe Munguia can give Canelo Alvarez problems?
I think it's a good fight. I think it's an all-action fight. Canelo's very clever. He hits harder than John. But he's getting older. And that output that Munguia has, like every time he was on John, there was no time for breathing. Out of the clinch, boom, straight back in. And you got to fight fire with fire, or technically you got to be so smart to outbox him. And I think it's a brilliant fight. All Mexican fight. I hope that gets made.
Whatever John decides to do next, ultimately that decision will only be up to him and his family. But what a servant he's been to British boxing over the years.
Yeah, I mean, like we talked a lot after the fight, and obviously he'll make his decision soon. But what he did to turn his career around, from getting beat by Nick Blackwell, from getting beat by Jack Armfield, and Armfield and Fielding and Robbie and Callum Smith and Billy Joe Saunders, there are 4 fights that he lost all of those on points. Like to not win at least 1 or 2 of those, if you watch them, they're all like very close decisions. And the Callum Smith fight, maybe he could have got the decision that night and been a world champion. But from there, what he did, he boxed in Vegas. He won the interim world title. Obviously, boxed Canelo Alvarez in front of 70,000 in Guadalajara. Beat Zach Parker. Beat Daniel Jacobs at Alexandra Palace. Fought Jaime Munguia in front of 10,000 in Phoenix. Look, I'll be honest with you, and I know people don't always like talking about money. I'm just so pleased he can leave the sport with a nice few quid. And we've been able to pay off the mortgage, have a nice house, with his family and continue in boxing if that's what he wants to do. But I think in a training capacity, I think he's going to be a brilliant trainer. Whether he fights again or not, he'll make that decision. But for me, he's overachieved in the sport and could have actually achieved even more if he got a little bit of rubber to green.
I remember, Eddie, we sat down in your office and we talked about Ryan Garcia looking like he was going to be fighting Romero rather than Devin Haney. Those talks seems to have taken a bit of a U-turn, and is there now an April date that has opened up?
Yeah, there's talks going on. I mean, I think Ryan Garcia tried to make the Rolly fight, couldn't get made. I think he's back wanting the Devin Haney fight. I'm going to catch up with Devin and Bill this week, and I think it's just the fight to make. It's the fight for DAZN, it's the fight for Devin, it's the fight for Ryan, and hopefully he can get over the line.
What do you make of the news that Gervonta Davis's next fight could be in the UK? And if that does happen, what type of a draw do you expect him to be, regardless of the opponent?
Yeah, it'd be a good draw. I mean, when we brought Lomachenko over to fight Luke Campbell, we sold out the O2 straight away. And although Gervonta is not known to the casual fan in the UK, there's enough fight fans that will want to watch him box. I don't know who the opponent can be around 140 pounds because it's none of our guys that have been discussed. So I don't know. I don't know the substance of the rumours, but yeah, it'd be great. I mean, he's boxed in the UK before, I believe, against Liam Walsh at the Copper Box. So I'm sure if he came back, British fight fans would be watching him fight.
In terms of some other bits of news, obviously lots happening this week. Joshua Buatsi versus Dan Aziz. Any concerns from yourself going up against that fight? Same time in the UK, or is that healthy?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good fight. I think probably be on a little bit earlier than ours, but Conor Benn's a massive draw. That's a good fight. Don't know how it'll go really. Joshua Buatsi's been so inactive. Dan Aziz, on paper, head to head, Joshua Buatsi should be dealing with Dan Aziz, but he's just not looked the fighter that I thought he might go on to be. And if he's not on point, I think Dan Aziz will win the fight. But we'll be live from Vegas with Conor Benn.
What have you made of the Fury Usyk build-up recently? Obviously, we saw little clips of the head-to-head with Steve Bunce, a few jibes about earrings, etc. What have you made about how that fight's building?
Yeah, it's building nicely. I mean, Fury's, there's not many people who are better in the build-up than Tyson Fury. And I think as the content comes thick and fast, the fight's going to get bigger and bigger. Fascinating fight, two brilliant fighters, exactly what we need in boxing. It took His Excellency to bring that together. We'll be there because we've got a couple of fighters on the undercard, and I can't wait to see it in the flesh. It's a fight that really gives you a generational great in a division. And Tyson Fury has had a great performance against Klitschko, great performances against Wilder, and if he beats Usyk, no one can really argue that he's the top dog. Love Usyk, worked with him for a long time, but I want to see Tyson Fury win the fight, because if he wins and AJ can get the win against Ngannou, it just sets up a mega fight. And I always back the Brit, and I do believe he's the favourite in the fight.
How is the 5v5 progress going?
Yeah, good. There's been loads of conversations, and I think George is just getting everything boxed off with Fury against Usyk, and then we'll continue those discussions looking at around June time for that fight. Loads of divisions being discussed. I don't know, will there be a few late signings within the transfer window to build the strength of the team? Who knows, because we all want to win so bad, but it's looking really good. I mean, really, as I've said before, it's more like 12v12. Like, there's that many fights we could do against each other that people would love. And I said to George, maybe we have a little extension of that tournament in the UK, but there's going to be some big fights on that card, and we'll announce them all, and the weight divisions on Joshua Ngannou Fight Week.
What did you make of the news yesterday that Shakur Stevenson took to social media to seemingly retire?
I think sometimes fighters don't necessarily realise how the game works. Like, he boxed for the WBC title at lightweight. Once you do that, you put yourself out of the position in other rankings. So when Navarrete moves up from 130 to 135, he becomes the automatic mandatory under WBO rules. And then they just go to the next in line. So Shakur Stevenson wasn't really even in the running for the WBO title, but he would think, I should be getting that. But really, Top Rank will make the fight, and then maybe he fights the winner. So, a little bit of toys out of the pram. But I get why he's frustrated, because he wants to be a great, and he wants to win all the belts. But I'm sure he'll get his opportunity in time.
We don't think he has retired then?
Absolutely not in a million years.
I do want to ask you about Jack Catterall, Josh Taylor. Been a bit of back and forth about whether this fight can land on the zone. Can you explain to us what the latest is on that front, and perhaps why it might not be the right fight for the zone, in your opinion?
Every fight gets evaluated individually. And hold on, could you come back, please?
I swear this happens every time. It always does.
The room needs cleaning, to be fair. Every fight gets evaluated individually, and I think that fight, in terms of the purses that are... Could you come back, please? Unless it's Matty. No.
I doubt it.
No.
This is only one take, so we'll have to... So, right, Josh Taylor, Jack Catterall.
Okay. Yeah, every fight gets evaluated individually. Hi. Could you come back, please?
I'll be a bit concerned if it is Matty Lawless, because he's got a key to your room.
Every fight gets evaluated individually, and that fight, for the numbers that are involved, needs to be a pay-per-view fight. DAZN feel it's not a pay-per-view fight. But we want the opportunity for Jack Catterall. So we sat down with Jack and Sam and said, if someone else is willing to do that fight on pay-per-view, let's get it made. So, we're working as a team to try and get that fight over the line. I said to Sam, go and do your negotiations, go and speak to Sky or whoever you're going to speak to, and see if they want to get that fight made. So we'll wait and see how that progresses.
Mr. Frank Smith is in Tokyo.
Yeah.
What's the latest?
Yeah, it's a really interesting announcement. I'm not sure what I'm allowed to say, but a little old concept that we used to run many years ago has re-emerged its head in a new exciting format for a lot of money. And there's 8 very lucky gentlemen that will be announced this week to compete in Japan in March. And I'll leave it over to Frank Smith because it's his deal. And he's got a lot of interesting pronunciations at the press conference on Thursday or Wednesday, and then heads here. So, yeah, big moment for us. Our first show in Japan. Obviously, big restructuring of a very successful format.
Last couple now, Ed. Katie Taylor, in terms of next moves, potential fights, are you certain it will be Chantelle next, or perhaps are there doors opening of different opportunities at the moment? Because it's gone a bit quiet.
Yeah, no, it's only gone quiet because it's January, and the fight's going to take place in probably May. We've made it very clear, and Katie's made it very clear she wants to fight Chantelle Cameron. We've still got to negotiate it, and the numbers have got to make sense all round, particularly for Chantelle Cameron. She's done an amazing job. She won the first fight. She lost the second fight. 2 Fight of the Year contenders. It's a massive fight. So we'll do everything we can to make it. We don't really have a plan B. There are options, but that's quite honestly the fight we want to make. We represent both fighters. They've both been incredible in the 2 fights. I think the third would be even better, even bigger. So we'll do everything we can. And those talks, I think Katie's coming to the show this week, actually, here. And we're speaking to Chantelle's team as well to see if we can get it made.
And for Leigh Wood, I know he's so desperate, isn't he, for that City Ground fight. I know we're doing everything we can in our power to make that happen. What's the percentage sitting at right now?
I don't know. I mean, look, May the 18th is the date, and I don't want to pile the pressure on Nottingham Forest, but it is on them. We're ready to go. It's Leigh's dream. I think it would be a very successful event for Leigh and the city and the club. But it's got to make sense for them in terms of timing, other events around it, and hopefully we can get the all clear. If we're not, we'll have to present another option to Leigh. But I know he feels like the only thing that's left to tick in a box of Leigh Wood's career is that City Ground fight. So hopefully the city and the club can make it happen.
Seen a lot of rumours on social, and more, not just rumours, but more opinion from fans that one of the 5v5s they'd love to see would be Josh Warrington versus Nick Ball. I guess, hypothetically, if that happened, who could Leigh fight at City Ground?
I don't know. I mean, you got Joe Cordina, looks like, out on the Fury Usyk card. That could be a big fight up at 130, but I'd also look to do that fight for Joe in Cardiff as well. So, I don't know. Like I said, Leigh's done it all, really. Is there a US fight in the pipeline against someone? But City Ground is really the only thing on his mind. Nick Ball against Josh Warrington's an incredible fight. Nick Ball's fighting Ray Vargas on the Joshua Ngannou undercard. And you've also got Maurizio Lara ready to come back in a big fight. And as I said to George Warren, Nick Ball against Maurizio Lara is X-rated. So we'll see that there's some incredible fights to make, and it's very important to us that we try and give Leigh Wood what I believe he deserves.
When you look at the conversations you've had with Bob Arum and Oscar De La Hoya and Frank Warren, of course, boxing in a good position right now. And I guess for the fans, in terms of drawing big attendances in for UK shows, could there ever be, these cross-collaboration events happening in the UK as well?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we've already spoke to George about a potential Matchroom Queensbury in the UK as an extension because there's so many fights to make. That would do really well. I mentioned Matchroom against Golden Boy. Oscar's body language weren't great, but he talks about, is our stable strong enough? I mean, we have, I think, is it a dozen world champions across the board? I think they have 3. But they have some great fighters, so do we. I think that's a really compelling format. And I think that works. I think the fight fans buy into the narrative. They talk about the picks, they talk about the weight classes, and you'll see through the success of Matchroom v Queensbury that, this kind of team concept, I think, can work.